Hey, lovely freaks, and welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host, Amanda.
And I'm Hannah.
And if you're new here, hello, welcome. If you like things strange and unusual, you can go ahead and hit that subscribe button. You can also follow us, and you can head on down to the description box, and there'll be a Linktree link. Click on that, and it'll take you to all of our social media, Instagram, Facebook, all that jazz.
And all that jazz. I was waiting for it. Wait patiently.
That's going to be our new thing. So we're outside tonight, and if you hear a little bit of rain, that's what that is.
That's
but maybe
just our sound effects,
yeah,
guys.
maybe it'll be a good ambiance. I was about to say ambiance too.
Because I said it earlier.
So yeah, we are back. We took a pretty good long break. We didn't do an episode on Wednesday, but we're not going to do one every Wednesday, obviously. Like, those are just bonus episodes. So yeah, hopefully you guys are excited about our episode, and fingers crossed, because I think this weekend we will finally be on Spotify and iTunes.
Yay.
I'm almost positive. I know I said that like every time just about, but stuff has been coming up, man.
Yeah.
I was going to do it this past week. Yeah. Well, I was going to do it this past week, but then, mine and Corey's anniversary, and then Adeline got sick, and then it's just been one thing after another. January, flew by, but it also kind of had a lot of crap happen in it. Yeah. Not bad stuff, just a lot of stuff.
Forgetting it's 2021.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, yeah.
I keep forgetting it's February. January just
oh, yeah, that's right.
Gone.
Mm-hmm.
So today, if you saw the title, then you know what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about Travis Walton. I'm sorry. I'm even looking at it. Do you see? I said Davis.
Oh. Davis Walton.
Travis
Walton.
Walton. Abduction. So Travis, this is a pretty, a lot of people know this one. It's a pretty famous one, I guess you would say. Have you ever heard of this abduction?
No,
Maybe not. So. You might have once we start talking about it. But so this is an actual alien abduction. We haven't really talked about one of those yet, so I thought maybe we'd do that this time. And we're outside, so if you guys hear anything other than the rain,
hear me scream because I see something.
Yeah.
Kind of scared that we're doing this outside and we're talking about aliens.
Yeah.
Aliens are just like, oh, okay. They're all just listening.
Spaceships are piling up in the sky.
Oh, I love that story. It's the Tim story. Tim did that.
He was the one. He's the one that got, he got the guy.
Are you talking about you, Tim?
Yeah.
Oh, fuck.
Okay. Anyways, okay. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So Travis Walton, and I'm not really going to say anything much about his past life or nothing like that. He wasn't a serial killer, so we're not going to go down that road. We're just going to kind of dive right into what happened the day he got abducted. So first of all, he wrote a book after this, and it was called Fire in the Sky, and there was also a movie made in 1993 about this, but I think it was kind of like a low budget movie. I didn't really see any, I think Rotten Tomato gave it I don't know, 20 or something, 20%. So, it wasn't super blockbuster. Yeah. So Travis lived in a small town called Snowflake, and it was in eastern Arizona. So this takes place in Arizona, and this is kind of crazy. All this takes place in Arizona. And it just brought me back to the whole Skinwalker Ranch and, Utah and Arizona and all those places that have so much alien activity. It's ridiculous. So, yeah. Travis was kind of what you'd call a roughneck guy. So he wasn't he liked muscle cars, rodeos. He was outdoorsy. He was also a lumberjack. So, he was definitely a man's man kind of guy,
Man to man.
He wasn't into, sci-fi and stuff like that. So people couldn't really say, oh, well, he made this up because, he's such a UFO nerd. If I got if I got abducted by aliens, nobody would fucking believe me, because they'd be like, yeah, okay.
Sure, Amanda. I
swear. Yeah. So the town of Snowflake is also about 45-minute drive from the Apache National Forest, and this is where Travis was working as a logger. He would sometimes work with his best friend, Mike Rogers. So Mike had a contract with the National Forest Company to kind of like go in and cut these trees down and kind of make it, because they were having a lot of forest fires. So they had a deadline that they had to make, and this will come up later. They had to make this deadline in order for the contract that they had with the National Forest Company to cut down these trees. And that'll kind of come into play later. But this is who he was working for right now. He was working for basically his best friend, which was Mike Rogers. November 1975, Travis was on Mike's crew, and they were set to cut down 1,200 acres of like sick trees that were already, a hazard because they were dying and they could catch fire super easily. So there was 5 other men on this crew: Ken Peterson, Alan Dallas, John Gillette, and Dwayne Smith.
I thought you were going to say Dwayne Johnson.
No. And Steve Pierce. Yeah, The Rock. The men they weren't all like best friends, but they kind of hung out, but it needs to be noted that they weren't all like best friends. So just Mike and Travis were best friends, and then they were, just work friends. So these aren't people that would definitely lie for him at the drop of a hat. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like when I used to work, I had work friends and I wouldn't have lied for any of them. So we just worked together. They were also trying to work quick, like I said, because they were trying to meet a deadline. And so on November 5th, around 6 o'clock, they all got off work and they all headed back down the mountain towards Snowflake and the town that they lived in. And they were all in Mike's truck. Travis was the passenger. He was in the passenger seat, and the other guys were behind him in the back. And they were headed back down the road, and it was, getting dark. Travis saw something strange through the trees. It was a strange light. He wasn't the only one that saw this light, though, because all the men in the car also saw it. Travis said he thought that at first maybe it was just like the sun going down, but then he remembered that the sun had already went down because this was in November, so it was around the winter time, so it gets dark early. Yeah. Then he thought, well, maybe it's headlights, or maybe he thought maybe there were some hunters out there that maybe did like a campfire or something like that. Mm-hmm. So, he was trying to rationalize everything that he could think of as to why this light was out there. Sorry about that. Hold on. Mute. Okay. My computer. Yes, he was. Anyways, so yeah, he was trying to rationalize everything that he could think of. So the light was so bright that it was starting to come onto the road and kind of like in front of the truck. So as they got closer, it was, spilling over onto the road, so they could tell that this was a really bright light. It wasn't as dim as they thought it was. Yeah. Eventually the truck caught up with the light, and when they did, off to the right, a good distance from the road, they saw a UFO. Every single man in the car sees it because the truck was stopped and they were only about 30 feet from this UFO. Mm-hmm. It was just hovering about 15 feet above a pile of trees that were cut down. It had no noise, and it was shiny and had no doors. Travis said it looked like two pie plates that were stacked together, with an upside down bull on top. So like it had like rods coming out of the top of it. Mm-hmm. Travis is in such amazement that he gets out of the truck and wants to get closer. And the other guys like start telling him, what are you doing? Like, get back in the truck. Yeah. But he just keeps walking closer and closer to it. He said it was almost like he was kind of drawn to it and he didn't want to like look away. Which is crazy because it reminds me of when we saw that UFO, because we got out of the truck. Like, yeah, we got out of the car, which was dumb. Get out of the car. I'd be like, oh, but wow. It was just something about it. Like, you just wanted to like see it. Yeah, it's weird. Mm-hmm. It's a weird feeling. As he gets closer and closer, he can hear beeping noises and sounds, and he can also hear high and low pitch sounds. He then is standing right under the UFO. And all of a sudden he starts to hear like a deep rumble sound, and the guys said later, and the ones that were in the car, they could hear this too. It almost sounded like engines starting up or something like that, so they kind of thought maybe it was just gonna take off.
Yeah.
The UFO then started shaking a little, and Travis at this point was like, okay, I'm gonna crouch behind this log, I'm kind of got to get away from it.
Yeah.
And he started to get scared. So he was like, okay, I got to like run back to the truck as quick as I can. So he stands up and gets ready to run back to the truck. Right before he decides to take off running, a beam of light that was blue shoots out of the UFO and electrocutes him. He feels it strike him in the head and the chest, and then he blacks out. The men in the truck later say that he flipped backwards about 8 to 10 feet in the air. So it's like he got struck by lightning.
Yeah.
They said that it even sounded and looked like a lightning bolt coming out of something. All the men started screaming and freaking out. So the men were like, Mike, I guess they were scared, obviously, and they thought maybe he was dead. So Mike, like, punches it and starts, like, racing down the road. The men are screaming, they're all freaking out. And then all of a sudden he gets to a barrier where the road is closed. Mike does. Mm-hmm. And Mike, at this point, keeps looking in the rearview mirror because he thinks that the spacecraft's following them. But when they get to this barrier, he realizes, okay, it's not following us anymore. The men realize that maybe they should go back for Travis because he could be, like, seriously injured. He could be dead. Or maybe he could be gone. Maybe the UFO could have done something to him. So they finally make it back to the spots. When they get there, though, Travis was nowhere to be found, or the UFO. Mike said he thought he saw that there was like a bright streak of light in the sky. But he isn't sure whether or not he for sure saw that,
Yeah.
Like, I guess he thought he saw, like, out of the corner of his eye, like, something streak off into the night sky.
So, like, they went away real quick?
What?
Like the UFO?
I mean, obviously, because that's what he said he thought, but he couldn't be sure. At this point, the men were pretty sure that the UFO had took Travis because they don't see how, like, he could have got up that quick and ran into the woods or whatever. So they decided to call the police. And so they get back down to the bottom of the mountain, and this is about 7:30, and they pull over they don't make it to the town. They just decide to pull over to the first phone booth they see. So they pull over to the first phone booth they see. Cam Peterson calls the Navajo County Sheriff's Office and says his friend is missing. He doesn't tell the police how or why he is missing. He just says that he's missing. And that's actually a pretty good idea because he said that, if I would have told them my
UFO,
friend got abducted by an alien UFO craft, they would have been like, okay.
Well,
what have you been drinking?
You're crazy.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't have looked for him.
Yeah, when the deputy, Chuck Ellison, shows up at the spot, the men, like where the men stopped at, they were still at the phone booth. He can tell that they are, like, they've seen something, like, pretty shocking because he said that they were all shaking. Their eyes were bloodshot from crying. Some of the men were crying. And like I said, these are not men that cry. Like, these are lumberjacks. I mean, they don't cry just because of anything. They tell him the whole story, and when they tell him the whole story when he shows up there. So after they tell him the story, Ellison, the deputy, doesn't think that they're lying, but because he doesn't know really anything about UFOs or anything like that, so he can't be sure. I mean, obviously.
Maybe
so
he thought they got a little too high. Things.
That's why they got red eyes. So Ellison calls the sheriff, Gillespie, and tells him the whole story over the phone. He also told another deputy to go to Travis's house to see, if he's actually there. He wanted to see if maybe he was pranking them or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
About 30 minutes later, after they realized that Travis was not at his house, so it didn't take them very long to get to his house, that's what I was thinking, the sheriff and the undersheriff named Ken Copeland, so he's like the sheriff, I guess, that's in training, because that's why it says undersheriff, show up on the scene. Sheriff Gillespie doesn't put up with, like, any nonsense, but right away, he doesn't believe that the men are lying because of how scared and shocked that they were. So he's not a guy like that believes in aliens or anything like that, but just the amount of fear that was in their faces, he was like, there's no way that they're lying about this. Which is pretty crazy to me. So
They must have been really scared then.
I mean, yeah, if I saw you get like flipped up in the air, I'd probably shit my pants.
Yeah. Have to pick you back up off the ground.
So the sheriff had also told the guys that he had heard about UFO sightings before in the area and stuff like that. So it wasn't too far-fetched for him, but he had never heard of an abduction, thus far.
Yeah.
However, he isn't really, so since the men were so shaken and everything, he decides to go back to take everybody back to the spot where it happened. So all three officers, Ken, Mike, and Alan, they all head back to the spot where Travis was last seen. And they find no Travis, obviously, no footprints, no evidence to show that there was even a UFO anywhere in the area. But you gotta remember, all the trees were already cut down, kind of, so there wouldn't be any trees, knocked over or nothing like that. And so
I
after,
don't think UFOs have been reported to do that, have they?
no, not that I know of.
So
I mean,
don't
there's
think they could
crop
do
circles and things like that,
that.
so after being there for like a few hours, they decide they're just going to pick the search back up in the morning because it's getting too dark and too late. So the policemen, Copeland and Ellison, they drive to Travis's mother's house, Mary, to tell her, like, your son's missing because they need to inform the family, obviously. And something has happened, like, that they can't explain. So they don't really want to tell her, your son got abducted, but something happened, and we're not really sure what it is. So she is a single mom of 6, and she lives alone in the mountains, in like the mountain region area, but she doesn't live that far from Snowflake and where Travis lives. Yeah. So once they are there, they tell her, and then they decide to kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Like,
what?
Leisurely tell her the story.
Oh.
So kind of just hint upon it, I guess.
She was probably like, okay.
So she finally like realizes, okay, they're talking about aliens or whatever, but she's not freaking out. Like, she's super calm, almost
probably
like
in shock,
almost like too calm.
Yeah.
So she's so calm, and it's unusual. Like, 'cause they basically told her, yeah, your son, we think he was abducted by an alien, like a UFO.
Yeah.
So it was so weird to the undersheriff, Copeland, that he makes a mental note of it and her behavior because it was just, like, really suspicious. And he wasn't sure if maybe, okay, this seems like a setup, or has this happened before, to the family.
Like, she knew. She's
Yeah.
like, yeah, I called them. He was acting bad. So
Yeah.
He needed his lesson.
So the men drive her to her daughter's house, Allison, and they call Travis's older brother, Dwayne. So Dwayne is like the older brother, and he's like the headstrong brother of the whole group as well. So the next morning, November 6th, they decide to start the search in earnest, which is where the logging place is. And after about 50 men, they gather, they all spread out and start their search. What was that sound?
I don't know.
Did you hear that?
I'm creeped out. I keep looking around. I'm like, I
noticed you're like not even over here looking.
Sorry. Yeah, continue. I'm just like looking around.
It's not like we're in the middle of the forest.
It's just weird. Those apartments
neighbors.
are so creepy.
The apartment complex?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I don't like how close they are. That's weird.
I know, that's like the only drawback to this house was when we bought it, the apartments being like right there, pretty close.
Yeah.
But they don't really bother anybody.
I feel like someone's watching us.
Yeah. So after searching all day, of course, they find nothing because we know that Travis got abducted by aliens. They don't know that yet. Friday, they search and they find nothing again. Then Saturday, then Sunday. And by Sunday, the 8th, they have added helicopters, men on horseback, and planes to fly overhead to like make sure that the helicopters aren't missing anything. Mm-hmm. But obviously, still nothing. Now word has gotten around that there might actually be an alien abduction in the area, and people from all over, of course, have come out to see, even like UFO experts and just people that are like into UFOs and aliens. They finally end the search on November 9th. That Sunday, and the police by this point have spent $10,000 trying to put forth the effort to find Travis. So they put a lot of money into this. At this point, the police start thinking, okay, is this story even true? Maybe the men killed Travis and this story is just like a cover-up. Maybe one of them killed him and they're trying to help. Everyone thinks the crewmen need to take a lie detector test to rule this out, and the theory like of them covering up for a murder. And it has to be said yet again, like I've said in the past, that lie detector tests are never accurate, so just keep that in mind, and they're not always a good idea. And in the 1970s, in the 1970s they weren't reliable at all. Because they had pretty much not just came out with them, but, you know, it just wasn't that great technology. The crew, however, wanted to prove that they were innocent, so they agreed to a lie detector test. And Monday, November 10th, they headed to the courthouse to take the test. Cy Gilson was the examiner that was like giving the men the test. Gilson asked them all the same questions, and the last question would always be, every time he'd ask the men, did you tell the truth about actually seeing a UFO last Wednesday when Travis Walton disappeared? All the men passed the test except for one, Alan Dallas. Now, it should be noted that he actually walked out midway through his test. We're not completely sure like why he walked out or why he left, but it was said that maybe the examiner had like pushed some buttons and like kind of made him think that it made Dallas think that the examiner like believed that they were murderers, you know?
Yeah.
So he kind of just got pissed and left. So his test came back inconclusive since obviously he didn't finish it, but all the other men completely passed and were proven innocent, and no murder was proven to have happened. Sheriff Gillespie sees now that it's definitely their UFO story seems to be like pretty true. And even if the guy, like, all the other guys pass, so I mean it's not that big of a deal. Now if like one or two of them didn't, it'd be like, that's suspicious. Yeah.
But all of them, that's pretty rare.
But also you gotta remember lie detector tests are not always great. That night though, the 10th, that Sunday or Monday, Travis's sister gets a call, and who calls her? Well, Travis. Yep. Her husband, Grant, picks up the phone, and there's a man on the other end, and the operator says, hey, I've got someone calling collect. Do you want to patch them through? And he was like, sure. And little did we know, it's Travis. And he says, hey, I need a ride home. Yeah. So Travis...
Where was he?
I will get there. Mm-hmm. So Travis is back home, and he is going to finally be able to tell what happened to him and where he went. He says when he wakes up on the forest floor, so this is like what he remembers. He said he wakes up on the forest floor, and the first thing he remembers is seeing a spacecraft above him. And it seems this one is a little bit bigger than the last one that he saw before he passed out. It is hovering above him for a little while, and then it just takes off into the night. in the blink of an eye. After he stumbles to his feet, he is weak and his chest hurts and he's having like a lot of chest pain, but he thinks it seems to be like he thinks, okay, maybe that's from when I got struck by lightning or whatever that was, you know. He starts walking in the direction that he remembers, and he is still wearing the same clothes that he was wearing. He thinks that he's okay, but he said that it's been like, he could tell that it had been like a few hours, or he thought it had only been a few hours, and he said, okay, I gotta find my bearings and kind of get back home. So he thinks that he's only been away for a couple hours, or he probably thought, okay, these douchebags just left me here.
Yeah.
You know, because I would be too. He eventually makes his way to a payphone and he calls his sister. His brother-in-law picks up the phone, like we said, and his brother-in-law and his brother-in-law's brother, pick him up from where he's at. And the first thing that the men say that they notice is that he looks like he's lost weight. Travis claims later that he in fact actually did lose about 10 pounds. Keep in mind he was only gone for 5 days. So he actually lost about 10 pounds. He also...
What's his secret?
Has a lot, yeah. He also has a lot of facial hair, like more facial hair than he did before he left. Dwayne, his brother, checks him out and makes sure he doesn't have any injuries when they get back to the mother's house, Mary. The only thing that he can find is there's a red dot on the inside of his right elbow. But other than that, he seems completely fine. The red dot, however, kind of looks like a puncture wound, like from a large needle or something like that. Travis has no idea how it got there, but it wouldn't be too far-fetched to say that, okay, maybe it was from, you know, him being a lumberjack, because he could have got stuck by a stick or, you know, something like that.
Or he was probed.
I'm going with that one. He also has no bruises or burns or anything from like where he got hit. And you remember, I mean, they said he got hit and like flew back like 8-10 feet. So I can't believe he doesn't have any like burns or
bruises or anything like that.
Or, you know, dead. I mean, I don't know. On the outside, he looks completely fine. However, psychologically, he is a complete mess. He keeps talking about seeing creatures with whitish gray skin and huge eyes. The family keeps asking him if he is okay or hurting, but he keeps saying, no, I'm fine, no, I'm fine. Dwayne decides to not call, he does, but Dwayne decides not to tell anyone that he's back yet, and
like the
police, and he decides to not call the police because of Travis's state of mind. He isn't really like all there, is what he thinks. And this decision seems like it might be a mistake later on, because if there's nothing to hide, like, why would you not call the police? It just makes it harder for people to believe you.
Well, I can't understand, because he's been through a lot.
Yeah,
like,
I kind of do.
I'd be like, I don't want police officers questioning you.
Yeah, well, also, there was tons of reporters everywhere because it had gotten out. The word had gotten out about this, and there was a massive search. So, I guess he didn't want like reporters in his face, and Travis didn't really want reporters either.
I would just want to sleep if that happened to me. I'd be like, I just want to sleep.
Yeah. So, Dwayne, his brother, insisted he knew what was best for Travis and that they weren't going to call the police and all that. So, excuse me. Hold on. Talk. I need water.
Oh, okay. Well, I think that was a good idea that he did, like, let him stay home. Yeah. And if he sees all those, like, I want to know what they look like.
Some of the, like, UFO experts that were around in the area, they said that, like, they were telling the family, they would call him and they'd be like, if he does come back, or if he does show up or whatever, don't call the police, because they're going to call the government, or the government's going to find out, and they're going to try to just shut it down, you know. They're not going to want him to speak or anything like that. So, with all that being said, Dwayne decides to take Travis to Phoenix in the middle of the night. He is trying to get him to a doctor to do like a full examination in private, and so that way it won't draw a lot of attention to him. However, the cops already know something is up because the operator that like put through the collect call, they called the police and they said that someone had called the family at midnight from a payphone. So they're like, okay, that's suspicious. Sheriff Gillespie is almost sure that it's Travis, and he sends deputies to dust the phones for fingerprints, but from what they can tell, the fingerprints don't seem to match Travis's, which isn't that big of a deal. On November 11th, Travis and his brother have made it to Phoenix, and when they do, Dwayne decides, okay, it's time to call the sheriff. So he does, and Travis, he tells him like Travis is back, but he tells him that he is at a private hospital in Tulsa, Arizona. So he lies to him because he's not at a private hospital, which was kind of dumb because at that point you would think that the sheriff would be thinking, okay, did he go off on like a drug bender or something and he's in rehab or something like that. Dwayne gets him to the doctor. Sorry, my throat is like dying over here. I promise I don't have the Rona.
You're thirsty.
Yeah. So, anyways, okay. Dwayne gets him to the doctor, and
every time you say that name,
Dwayne,
I think of Dwayne Johnson.
Oh, it's a specialist who specializes in abductions, and actually, there's somebody that he got in touch with, like from the UFO specialist and all that. I guess maybe they had told him, hey, if your brother comes back, you need to take him to these people. They're called...
I would have taken them to them.
Yeah, they're called APRO. This is the name of the, like, doctors and the organization, I guess you could say. It's called APRO. As far as the doctors can tell, Travis is physically fine. Everything looks great. He doesn't show any signs of starvation or dehydration, which seems weird because he had lost 10 pounds, but there wasn't any signs of that in his urine. And also, if he was like on drugs or just in the woods for 5 days, like he would be severely dehydrated and all that. Sheriff Gillespie finally comes. So this time they've made it like back to Dwayne's house, and after the doctors do their examination. So he finally comes to Dwayne's house that night, because he found out where Travis was there, which the sheriff obviously is like really pissed off. And honestly, I don't blame him because of all the manpower and everything and the money that they put into searching for Travis. So I can see it both ways, kind of. Travis starts telling him about what happened when he was gone, and he can see that when he gets to the part about like the creatures and everything and starts to explain that, he's like losing the sheriff. The sheriff's like, thinks, okay, this is bullshit, Travis finally says he wants to take a lie detector test to prove that he isn't lying, but he wants to do it in private because he doesn't want to get the media involved, and the sheriff agrees. Before Travis takes the polygraph test, the National Enquirer wants to talk to him, though. It turns out that the APRO doctors actually work for the National Enquirer, and that's how they found out about Travis. The Enquirer offers to put Dwayne and Travis up in a hotel and pay for all the scientific tests, like testing. In exchange, they want an exclusive story. So the National Enquirer, at this point, they're like pretty intense on the alien scope, and it reminded me of Men in Black because in that movie, like the first one, I think they talk about the National Enquirer and how they're always like pinpointing aliens, and that was funny. So I was like, oh, look at there.
A clue. A coincidence? I think not.
Yeah. So I just thought it was really funny. So Travis didn't want all the press, but one of the reporters said that they were going to pay him $1,000, and it seemed as though, like, she was kind of in the background, you know. It seems as though Dwayne was the one calling all the shots. So I think his brother really wanted to do this more than he did, because he says constantly that he didn't want any press, you know, all this stuff. Things get a little weird after this. On November 13th, the men check into the Scottsdale Sheraton Hotel, and there were tons of National Enquirer reporters. The APRO was there, and even UFO experts who had flown in to do more tests on Travis. At this point, I went too far. Travis still has not fully told his story to anyone. So the only thing he's told, you know, is what I've said. He remembers the creatures and waking up in the woods and all that. The Enquirer knows how to work around this, though, because they've hired they've brought in an expert hypnosis to try to hypnotize him. Some psychologists say that hypnosis can sometimes create memories instead of helping remember things that actually happen. However, it is used a lot in abduction cases. So a lot of experts believe that, okay, you're actually creating a memory and you're not actually remembering what really happened. And you're just creating it as like a dream, kind of, you know. But I know people that have been hypnotized and to try to remember past trauma so that they can get over it. And it's stuff that has actually happened. So, I don't know. However, the expert puts him under, and while all the reporters are there, Travis starts remembering exactly what happened to him. So, this is what he says. He remembers laying on a table in a white room with the ceiling shape kind of like a triangle. His shirt is not off, but it is raised up, and there's this medical instrument that he doesn't recognize attached to his chest. He thinks at first that he's in the ER because he remembers, you know, getting struck by the beam of electricity or whatever. So he thinks, okay, I'm in the hospital. He's kind of groggy. All of a sudden, he sees 3 non-human figures in the room next to him. They are short, hairless beings with oversized heads and dark black eyes. Their skin is a white grayish color, and they have long fingers with no fingernails.
Oh my god! It's what's his name from American Guy or American
Horror Story?
What?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
What's it called?
I don't know.
American
Dad?
American
Dad.
What's his name? He probed him.
It's Roger.
It's Roger. Yeah, Roger.
Okay. I was like, American, what? Yeah.
Sorry. Anyway, continue.
That does sound like Roger.
Just Roger's like, hold still.
Okay.
Gonna do a little prick here. You'll be fine.
Sorry.
So anyways, it sounds like that.
Travis decides to try to get up off the table, but he realizes that he really can't move because it seems that he's been like drugged or something like that.
Yeah.
He's very weak also. He then, when he tries to get up, like he starts having like severe pain in his head. So he tries to like grab a piece of like a beaker or something like that and break it to try to like use it as a shiv, I guess. And he's trying to like fight his way out of this room. He starts walking around, like, I imagine, like, you know, come at me, bro, with his like shiv, and the creatures just look at him and then they just leave the room. And I think that's funny because it's like they're just like, oh, we gotta go. We'll be back. So
we made him angry.
Yeah, he's mad. We'll just come back later.
He's like an animal.
When they walk out of the room, though, he walks out the room as well. The door is just left wide open. He remembers that there's a curved hallway, and he followed them, but they are, like, nowhere to be found. Like, he tried to follow them where they were, but he couldn't. He wanders into a small room with one chair. As he moves towards the chair, the walls around him seem to be getting darker and stars start appearing through the walls, almost like he is in outer space in this spacecraft, and probably could have been. All of a sudden, a human man...
A human man?
Yeah, give it a minute. All of a sudden, a human man walks into the room. He is a tall, handsome man with thick blonde hair. He is wearing a clear helmet, and his eyes look really weird. They're kind of like a bright hazel color, almost like an unreal color, a color that he's never seen before.
Vampire.
Yeah.
A vampire.
This human male takes Travis by the arm and leads him out of the room into another door. Since the man looks like a human, Travis is kind of put at ease at this point, and he's like, okay, I'll follow this guy. The man doesn't answer him when he asks him, where are you taking me? They pass the hangar where all the UFOs are. So they're in this big open hangar, and there's UFOs everywhere, and it kind of reminds me of like Star Wars.
Yeah,
that's what I envisioned. And they make it to a smaller room where there are 3 other humans waiting as well. They all look exactly the same. The males all look exactly the same. They have the same hair color and the same features, but there is one female. She helps Travis lay down on the table and tries to soothe him. And the last thing he remembers is some type of oxygen mask being put on his face. Almost like, the oxygen mask that they put on your face when they're counting you down in surgery.
Oh, okay.
And then next thing he knows is he wakes up. At this point, the hypnosis is over, and the story is finally out of what happened to Travis.
Wow.
Travis is also able to remember what he saw and what happened. So, at this point, he's like, okay, that's what happened. So, yeah.
What? Maybe they're making their own humans.
No. What I think is they... Hold on.
They got out of the room and they put on a disguise.
Yeah. They realized, they were like, oh, okay.
He needs stuff.
He's scared.
Yeah.
Of us, so we're gonna look like him. That's why they all looked the same. You know what I mean?
That could be it.
That's definitely what I think. So, where am I?
After the guy.
Oh, the next morning. Yeah. So after he got done, the next morning, he has to go take that polygraph test that the sheriff's office said that they would give him. So November 14th, he is scheduled to take the test, and he wanted to do it in private, remember? No reporters. Well, as he was leaving his house, someone called him, like a reporter called him, and asked him to make a comment about the test he's fixing to take, about the lie detector test. Mm-hmm. Travis tells the sheriff at this point, I'm not coming to do this. You promised that there wouldn't be any reporters, and obviously you lied because somehow they found out about the polygraph test. Which I didn't really understand that, because I was like, you just talked to the National Enquirer. They're going to post a story about you anyways, so what does it matter if these people find out about this polygraph test? Anyways, whatever.
Maybe he didn't want all of them outside because he thought he was going to be nervous and he'll fail the test.
Maybe, I don't know. They go back to the hotel, and because the National Enquirer has flown in like psychiatrists and things like that to evaluate Travis, to make his claim stronger, they also want to do their own lie detector test. The psychiatrists, however, are completely against this idea because they don't think that it'll work. Because, so when you take a polygraph test, you're supposed to, be calm and all that stuff. And if you're under stress, it can mess with the results.
And also, I feel like if you answered a question, let's say if you murdered, or you didn't murder your wife and your wife is missing,
mm-hmm.
and you keep thinking, okay, I gotta stay calm, mm-hmm. and the question comes up to you, your heart's gonna beat faster. You're gonna be like, okay,
upset.
Here's the question.
Yeah, you're already
Remember, be calm because you didn't do it. You know?
You're already stressed just because your wife's missing. So, yeah. And this guy's already stressed. So they make a deal with Travis, and the National Enquirer says, okay, if you fail the test, we won't post the results. Travis says, okay. He takes the test, and to everyone's surprise, Travis is lying, apparently, because he failed the test. But the psychiatrists say, like I said, that that doesn't mean anything because of the amount of stress that he was under when he took it. It's just ridiculous to think that he would pass with flying colors. I went too far. So on December 16th, 1975, they published Travis's story. He told when he was like under hypnosis. They published that story and they write it up. Then in February 1976, Travis and Dwayne and his mother Mary take a polygraph test and they all pass with flying colors. These results get published, and after the police are done with this like craziness, they're like done with this story. Like they drop it. That's the end. They don't want to hear any more about it. Yeah. And you kind of don't hear anything after that. However, Philip Klass. So this is a guy that he's like a avid debunker. Like that's what he does. He looks up cases, and he's been doing this for like 4 decades now. He's been doing this for 4 decades. So he looks up cases and he tries to like dig deep into every little detail of these alien abductions to try to be like, yeah, this is why this happened, this is why this happened, blah, 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 blah. Some people think he like works for the government because they don't want, people believing there's aliens out there. Or at this point they didn't. Now they don't really care. They're like, oh yeah, we saw like 5 the other day. It's great. And we're all just all like, COVID, oh my god.
Yeah. I think that's why the only reason, because they're like, oh, they're too busy to worry about that right now.
They've got COVID and they're losing their jobs, so we'll just throw aliens in there. But little do they know, we've known forever.
Literally, when it came out, we were all just like, yeah, guys, we know.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Nobody really even cared. In 1976, sorry, not 67, I was going backwards.
Time travel.
Philip Klass, this guy, this douchebag, I call him a douchebag because he kind of is, he started looking into the case and soon gathered enough evidence to say that the story was completely false. He finds an interview with Mike Rogers, Travis's best friend, who was like the guy, where he says that this is like the 4th day after Travis had went missing. On tape, he says that him and his crew were behind on the logging contract, and he hoped that maybe they will forgive his lateness since Travis had disappeared. Travis's brother also says a comment to like one of the UFO specialists or whatever. He says that he knows for sure Travis was abducted by a UFO because he actually saw the same spacecraft when he was a teen. Obviously, Philip Klass thinks that the whole story was set up for like the logging company, but they set all this up because they needed the extra time to finish their contract.
Why would they go to that length?
Exactly.
That's like too much. That's too much energy.
Yeah, and like, where was he? Because he wasn't at anybody's house.
And there was detectives and everything looking at evidence. They would have seen, oh, here he is right here. And, oh, he's going over there. Like, they didn't see anything.
He says that Travis and Dwayne were both into, like, UFOs and things like that. So maybe that's where they came up with the idea. There was a movie that was aired, I think, on NBC. Or CBS. I think it was NBC. Like a couple weeks before this, and it was about Betty and Barney Hill and their alien encounter that they had. That's another famous one. We'll have to do that one too. Yeah. And they claimed that they saw creatures with they were like grayish white aliens, and they had big eyes. Mm-hmm. So Klass also talks to the examiner that gave Travis the failed test. First of all, he finds out that Travis failed the test because nobody had known that because the National Enquirer had closed that, and not let that loose. But he talks to this examiner. The examiner's like, yeah, he failed. It wasn't due to so-called stress because he definitely was just lying. Philip's accusations all come out in a 17-page debunked, story script thing that he writes and puts out there. he also sends it to the UFO organization and all the skeptics, like in the debunking sites and things like that. And I don't know what their group's called.
Has this guy ever said that a UFO sighting was real? Maybe he is working for the government. He's just, or he's literally just pulling everything out of his ass because he doesn't want to believe it.
Yeah, I have no idea. The National Enquirer and the APRO doctors said they threw out the results of the polygraph. I couldn't think. They threw out the results of the polygraph because the examiner's questions didn't seem really fair, and also they didn't like his methods. I think he was trying to like really dig for too much information or something like that.
It's weird because like if I told you I ate a peanut butter sandwich 3 days ago, and you're like, I'm gonna find out, and if you were gonna dig and look for evidence to saying that it's not real, you're gonna find evidence somehow and say, well, really? Well, the toilet wasn't flushed 3 days ago, so you didn't take a shit.
I didn't see a peanut butter knife in the sink.
The peanut butter
fuck
cup
me,
was
I
not
washed it off. Like, yeah.
Like
I used other peanut butter. Calm down. Like, what? It's just a sandwich. Anyways, so yeah, he just seems like a douchebag. And there was actually like an interview with him and Mike and Travis. I think they were on like Larry King or something like that. I don't remember. And he was getting like so upset, like super upset about them trying to be like, no, dude, we really did see all this. Yeah. We don't really care if you believe us or not, but whatever. Like, he was getting really upset. So that's another reason why people thought maybe he was working for the government, because he was just trying so hard to cover it up, you know?
Yeah.
In July 1976, after Class published his findings, the Enquirer gives the crew $5,000 because they have like the best UFO story of the year. In 1978, Travis writes his first book. 1985, the screenwriter, I can't remember the screenwriter's name, but he decides to look into making this movie called Fire in the Sky. And then, like I said, in 1993, they actually put the movie out. In February 1993, Travis, Mike, and Alan, Travis, Mike, and Alan Dallas all retook a polygraph test yet again and passed. Philip Class has also said that, like, ever since then, he said they're lying, like, completely. Like, I think to this day, he probably thinks they're still lying. Now, one thing that's weird is in July 31st, 2008, Travis appears on a game show called Moment of Truth. So, this game show, they give them lie detector tests off camera.
Yeah.
And they ask them questions. And then on camera, they ask them the same question. And if they're lying, they don't get the money. But if they're not lying, they do get the money, you know, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
So, Travis was asked off camera, were you abducted by a UFO on November 5th, 1975? He says yes. And he said yes when the guy asked him that on camera. Mm-hmm. And he could hear off camera that the answer was false. And then the guy was like, that answer is not true. You're lying. Travis was completely upset about this and like really shocked, because obviously his family's sitting there, all these people all over hear this. So the first thing he does when he gets home from this game show, obviously he loses the game show, but the first thing he does when he gets home is he takes another polygraph test and he passes. So yeah, that just proves that polygraph tests are not accurate, because
I don't think they're like, because it just,
I mean, over the years, he's probably, I counted it up, I think he's taken, that I know of, he's taken like 6 polygraph tests, him and other people, and some of them come out that he is telling the truth. Some of them come out that are. It's also, like, based off of, like, the examiner. Like, whoever's giving the exam and the kind of questions they're asking, too. Because sometimes examiners can, like, ask tricky questions where it could either be a yes or a no. Mm-hmm. So, anyways, I don't know. But I believe his story. He says to this day, that's pretty much it. But he says to this day that definitely happened. He remembers everything, like I said.
And also, why would they lie? There's too much evidence. Like, how could they not find evidence of him? Like, if it was just he was
walking away. They didn't even find
away.
any footprints.
Yeah.
Like, where did he just float up in the air and, you know.
They were like, get on this crane and let's go.
I mean, I guess he's pretty good at covering his tracks, but they had dogs out there. I mean,
how did he lose those 10 pounds?
Yeah, they would have picked up his scent, you know, if he walked off. I still don't know how he lost all that weight.
And then also, he didn't want to talk about it at all. Like, if you know...
And it was 7 guys.
If it was a story, he would have gone straight to the police and been like, hey, I saw this.
Yeah, there were 7 guys in the car with them when they saw this going on, and all of them took the polygraph test and passed, you know.
Yeah.
So I'm just like, no, I believe his story. It's a crazy ass story though. Like, could you imagine?
I wouldn't sleep for days. I'd be afraid, like. Also, I would want to know what they did. Said that like he opened his eyes and the craft was still there and then it left. It made me think like just the aliens were like, hang on, let's just see if he wakes up for a minute. And he's fine. Okay, come on.
Yeah. We gotta make sure we didn't kill him. All right, let's go.
Is he okay? Oh, he's waking up. He's fine, guys. Let's go. Okay. Yeah. He's all right. He's getting up. He's a little wobbly.
It did remind me of Roger, though. When you said that, I was like, oh, yeah. Roger's like probing him.
Just let your organs for a minute. That's what Roger was doing. He was like, oh, hang on, guys. Just let me see if he's okay. He's kind of handsome. All right, he's good. Let's go.
He's my favorite character from American Dad.
Because it's literally short,
I was
gray.
like, American? What the
Yeah,
what
I was like, about? And then I started like,
yeah, and then I still didn't get it. I was like, I don't know. Yeah, sure, I don't understand.
And then I was like, Family Guy related.
And then I got it. So anyways, yeah, that's the story of Travis Walton. I hope you guys enjoyed this story. I thought it wasn't going to be that long, but it actually ended up being pretty long. Of course, I almost choked to death a few times, so, we had to pause.
Had to get a water break. It finally stopped
I don't know
raining.
what was going on. I think it's that fan out here underneath the...
We are outside and it's cold.
It's gotten colder since it rained a little bit.
Yeah.
It wasn't that cold, but now it's gotten colder.
That scared the shit out of me.
Dude, you scared us. My husband, looked through the sliding glass door at us, all creepily. I'm glad he didn't do that while we were talking about aliens.
That was just a random guy, just
inside my house?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I go to the extreme, okay?
Someone's broken!
Someone's broken! It's a guy, he's come to murder us.
Okay. Anyways.
Oh, it's your husband.
We've rambled. Alright, well, we hope that you guys have a fantastic day, and we may do a Wednesday episode, I'm just not sure, but we'll probably just do, I don't know, we might...
Talking in that magic black ball.
It's a good way to get shot. I don't know if anybody heard that. Anyways, we might do a Wednesday episode. I don't know. It just depends on how the week goes. But if not, we'll definitely have one for you guys next week. We might do a vampire.
Ooh.
Yeah, there's a vampire serial murderer story. I don't know if he's a serial killer or just a vampire.
I think I know what you're talking about.
I can't think of his name right now. But anyways, alright, well, we hope that you guys have a great night, and go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and like I said at the beginning, go to our social media, follow us, like us. We love you. Thanks. And we'll see you guys later. Bye!